As poet Jan Richardson reminds us, on the path of love, beloved is where we begin. This is our starting place. We are born from love and into love, and to love we shall return. But what do we do in this short time between infinities we call a human life? The poem tells us that this is a dangerous and fearful journey through the wilderness, this thing called life. But on this journey, there is also help. There is also rest. There are strange graces who lean themselves towards our ear and with their curious insistence whisper our name, beloved. Your minister, Reverend Jamie, told the story a couple of weeks ago of the trickster who tried to convince humanity that there was not enough, that they were not enough. But the Spirit of all left a message in a bottle reminding us that beloved is the name we are meant to call each other. If the story is true, said Reverend Jamie, then carry that word in your heart wherever you go. And if some trickster tries to tell you that you are not enough, remember that not enough is not your name. Your true name is, and always has been, beloved. How does being called beloved sound in your ears and with your spirit right now? Does it ring true or make you uncomfortable? Does it release something constricting your heart, or does it seem like a far off impossibility, or all or none of the above? How does it feel to be called beloved? Loving ourselves fully and fiercely is a tender topic for many of us. Each of us has a different experience with this topic, and it can bring up a lot. Our inner critic voice, the voices of those who have told us we are not good enough, not worthy, too loud or too quiet, too sensitive or too needy, those voices can become louder than those strange graces that whisper words of reassurance. There have certainly been times in my life that I haven't felt loved, when the name beloved felt false. Someone from the outside might say, "Are you serious? Of course you're loved." But I haven't always felt it, and I know I'm not alone. I've heard religious trauma is someone handing you an inner critic and telling you it's the voice of God. And that was true for me growing up. The trailblazing Black feminist icon and author Bell Hooks talks about this head on in her best-selling book, All About Love, New Visions. This is not a sweet little book about sweet little love. This book is a powerhouse of challenging, brilliant, gut-wrenching, and hopeful words about how patriarchy, modern culture, and fear corrupt our relationships. Bell Hooks looks unflinchingly at a world full of abuse, injustice, and isolation, and sees hidden there also the transformative power of love. For Bell Hooks, love is not a feeling, it is an action. Love is a skill we can learn, and we must do so in order to counteract the lovelessness in our lives and in our world. This is from the preface of her book. When I was a child, it was clear to me that life was not worth living if we did not know love. I wish I could testify that I came to this awareness because of the love I felt in my life, but it was love's absence that let me know how much love mattered. I was my father's first daughter. At the moment of my birth, I was looked upon with loving kindness, cherished and made to feel wanted on this earth and in my home. To this day, I cannot remember when that feeling of being loved left me. I just know that one day I was no longer precious. Those who had initially loved me well turned away. The absence of their recognition and regard pierced my heart and left me with a feeling of brokenheartedness so profound I was spellbound. We can never go back, I know that now, We can go forward. We can find the love our hearts long for, but not until we let go of grief about the love we lost long ago. I was still mourning, clinging to the broken heart of girlhood, to broken connections. When that mourning ceased, I was able to love again. I awakened from my trance state and was stunned to find the world I was living in, the world of the present, was no longer a world open to love. And I noticed that all around me, I heard testimony that lovelessness had become the order of the day. I feel our nations turning away from love as intensely as I felt love's abandonment in my girlhood. Turning away, we risk moving into a wilderness of spirit so intense we may never find our way home again. I write of love to bear witness both to the danger in this movement and to call for a return to love. In other words, beloved may be where we begin, but it is easy to lose our way and get lost on a path that is not love, longing to find our way home again. I want to offer today 3 ways to return to the path of self-love. If you are traveling along well-worn ruts like self-doubt, self-judgment, or self-abandonment, these trails may help you find your way back to the path of love. Some might be helpful detours for you, some dead ends. Follow the ones you might want to travel on for a bit, or if none of these work for you, forge your own and share them with others. A note about these paths back to loving oneself. They are all, starting with bell hooks, reflections from writers of color. One of the main ways I am trying to quiet the voices of self-judgment and self-abandonment in my head is to intentionally and consistently get other voices in my head besides dominant, white, patriarchal, heteronormative cultural norms, which are everywhere. In the words of best-selling author and activist Sonia Renee Taylor, whose work focuses on body liberation and racial justice, think of radical self-love as resistance training against our decades-old, tight, calcified thoughts. Radical self-love is resistance training to our calcified thoughts. Dominant cultural voices scream the values of rugged individualism, physical attractiveness, status, and perfectionism. Let us also hear voices of connection, authenticity, courage, and joy. We begin this resistance training at the start of the first trail that might lead you back to the path of love if you veered off course. A reminder of what self-love is not. Don't go down the false path of self-sufficiency and call it self-love. From The Rose Speaks. I want us to be more mindful of telling people to just love themselves. Sometimes a person isn't missing self-love. Sometimes they're missing community love. Sometimes they need the love of their village because, in all honesty, we were never meant to go through so much alone. We often hear things like, if you don't love yourself, how can you expect others to love you? Single adults are often told to work on loving themselves and then they'll be ready for a relationship. Reject this idea that you have to earn love. In the words of Chance Marshall, these sentiments of the self-love movement have caused so many of us to hold on tightly to the idea that we need to fully love ourselves in order to be lovable, that we need to have fully worked on ourselves, be all tidied up, put together, and completely emotionally, physically, socially, and spiritually healthy before we can be really lovable. We don't learn to love ourselves in isolation because we don't exist in isolation. To be human is to need other humans. And our capacity to love ourselves is often based on the amount of love we have received from others. It's all good and well shouting, love yourself at the top of our voices. But when that's heard by those of us who have found it hard, those of us who experienced our needs going unmet, of having countless disappointing relationships, prolonged periods of isolation or loneliness, abusive partners, or emotionally neglectful parents, it can leave us feeling like we're the ones failing or that something is wrong with us. If this is you, know you are not alone. When someone is hurting, telling themselves to just love yourself more is not a helpful message. I think it's the self-help equivalent of just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It doesn't help when we tell it to ourselves either, and then shame ourselves for not loving ourselves enough to be lovable. We heal in relationships, or again, in the words of bell hooks, whether we learn how to love ourselves and others will depend on the presence of a loving environment. Self-love cannot flourish in isolation. Self-love cannot flourish in isolation. Sometimes this means self-love demands courage, a courageous love of self. It might mean asking for help and admitting our needs. It might mean setting a boundary, making a therapy appointment, or going to whatever equivalent of a 12-step program might work for you. It means more of what we're practicing here now, dedicating ourselves to building community in a culture that isolates and claiming our belonging in this world. A second possible path back to self-love if we've detoured away. Self-love is embodied, literally embodied. Again, the words of Sonia Renee Taylor from her incredible book, The Body is Not an Apology, The Power of Radical Self-Love. The body is not an apology, the power of radical self-love. Humans are a varied and divergent bunch with all manners of beliefs, morals, values, and ideas. We have struggled to find agreement on much of anything over the centuries. Just think about how long we argued about gravity and whether the world is shaped like a pizza. But here is a completely non-controversial statement I think we have consensus around. You, my dear, have a body. And should you desire to remain on the spinning rock hurtling through space, you will need a body to do it. Everything we think we know is up for debate. Are we spiritual beings? Depends on who you ask. Do humans have souls? Been fighting about that since Aristotle likened the souls of fetuses to those of vegetables. But bodies? Yep, we got those. And given this widely agreed upon reality, it seems to me if ever there were a place where the practice of radical self-love could be a transformative force, the body ought to be that location. Taylor concludes, racism, sexism, ableism, homo and transphobia, ageism, fat phobia are algorithms created by humans' struggle to make peace with the body. A radical self-love world is a world free from the systems of oppression that make it difficult and sometimes deadly to live in our bodies. A radical self-love world is a world that works for every body. I am drawn to this truth that Taylor articulates so well. Radical self-love is anti-oppression work. It's how we all get free. If I claim the inherent worth and dignity of everyone, that includes me. It doesn't stop with me, but it includes me. I wonder, how many unkind thoughts or feelings of shame have you had about your body in your lifetime? If we added up every unkind thought that every one of us in worship today had about our bodies, how much love would we need to counteract that? Let's love ourselves that much. We can't hate ourselves into a version of ourselves we love. We are told our value comes from our thinness, our attractiveness, our wealth. But we're alive on this wondrous planet, hurtling through a universe so immense as to be unfathomable. I keep reminding myself how absurd it is that the shape of my body is any factor in my happiness. Author, activist, and nurturer of Black liberation, radical imagination, and transformative justice, Adrienne Maree Brown, who you were introduced to last week in Reverend Jamie's sermon. Adrienne Maree Brown speaks of embodied self-love in her article, Self-Love as a Journey, excuse me, Self-Love as a Journey, Practice, and State. In this article, she talks about the first time she wore a bikini in public as a fat woman, choosing joy instead of shame, the sun on her belly, and claiming freedom for her body. She writes, "Today I am wearing a bikini in public. I consider this miraculous occurrence as proof positive that self-love work is worth it. Self-love is a journey. I keep finding new bends in the road. First, I couldn't say fat. Then I couldn't show certain parts of my body. Then I couldn't trust other people's attraction to me as legitimate. Then I could see something appealing in my face, but not look below the neck. Then I kept unveiling more and more of myself. Then I had an ectopic pregnancy and reached my highest weight and had scars on my belly and dimples in my thighs and doubt in my heart. Then I created circles of community around the truth of my feelings about my body. Then I told someone the love of my body was unshakable, and it became true. Then I began to stand up straighter and get somatic healing and sashay when I walked and believe people when they said I was irresistible. In the past few months, I have experienced so much laughter, joy, and pain, grief. I am feeling more and more of my own emotional range. And as I feel more, it becomes easier to move towards what I want without apology or guilt. I live in a country and world where those in power want me to submit or disappear. Nope. In fact, I will be more of myself. I am 38, and this is a first in my adult life. My thighs dimple, my scars pock, my belly is soft, and the bikini is red. Joy is an act of resistance. Loving your body is a radical act of resistance. What is the equivalent of this for you? Something you can do to choose joy over shame, a way to love your body as it is, recognizing it is sacred and therefore worthy of celebrating. As Cole Arthur Riley says, we are tricked into believing we are anything less than glorious. A person does not wish to be seen if they believe they are ugly. What if, instead of hiding, you believed that you were glorious? A third possible path back to love. Self-love is simply and profoundly befriending yourself. Befriending yourself with all of your imperfections and all of your very complicated, very human feelings. This is an invitation to gentleness. Buddhist loving kindness meditation teaches us one way to practice this kind of care for our hearts. Loving kindness meditation, of course, starts with self and gradually extends to all beings, from self to a loved one, to a small group, and onto larger groups, strangers, those we find difficult, ever widening the reach of loving kindness breath by breath. The language repeats over and over, but it necessarily starts with self. It always starts with self. May I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be peaceful and at ease. How easy it is to rush over this wish, wanting to move on to the perhaps much easier task of wishing a friend well. How hard it is sometimes to sink into the words, may I be happy. May I be peaceful and at ease. Maybe feelings of not being good enough or worthy enough come barreling into our thoughts. In You Are Here, Discovering the Magic of the Present Moment, Buddhist Vietnamese monk, the late Thich Nhat Hanh writes, if you feel irritation or depression or despair, recognize their presence and practice this mantra. Dear one, I am here for you. You should talk to your depression or anger just as you would a child. You embrace it tenderly with the energy of mindfulness and say, dear one, I know you are there, and I am going to take care of you. Dear one, grief, I am here for you. Dear one, inner critic, it sounds like you need some tea. Dear one, anger, you don't have to be afraid. In this way, we gently befriend ourselves. We whisper to ourselves, beloved, it's okay. You have strayed from the path of love that is your birthright, but your breath will bring you back. You know the way home. May it be so, and amen.